friends, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Sarah for those of you that are new. This is my little corner of YouTube where I talk about mainly cross stitching, but I do want to throw reading in there as well. Today is going to be mostly reading. I'm going to recap my January reads, give a brief summary and my stars, and then I'm going to talk about my plans for February. If you're here for stitching, it's going to be very brief about one of the stitch alongs that I'm hosting. And if you're here for reading, like I said, it's going to be very brief, my stitching, so just stay for the reading bit of it. So without further ado, let's get into it. I am hosting my very first stitch along. If you've never done a stitch along before, fantastic. Me neither. I've never done it. I've never hosted one. I was literally sitting on the couch the other day and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is a great idea. So it's called Stitching the Super Bowl. I'll put a graphic here. You can also see it and download it and use it from my Instagram, and then I posted a story on YouTube where you can snag it. So the idea is to watch the Super Bowl, or don't watch it, just stitch it, stitch during it. I am a huge football fan. I love football in general. I watch pretty much every game I can during the season. Me and my husband both are very big football fans. I grew up watching it with my dad. I am a huge Dallas Cowboy fan, unfortunately. Every year at the end of the year I get super mad at them, and then in August I am rooting for them again. So we get a nice little summer break from each other. One day I might learn my lesson, but probably not. So I thought it would be fun because I do like watching football, like I said. So, but I don't, since I'm a Cowboys fan, it's in my blood to root against the Eagles and the Chiefs. I don't want to three-peat. I grew up and watched Tom Brady, and I think that's enough about that. So I don't care who wins. It doesn't matter to me, but I do just like watching the game, watching the atmosphere, the commercials, the halftime shows. So I thought it would be fun to kind of throw some stitching in there as well. So what you would do is you would use the first little box, the little square box, to post your project that you're working on before you do any work to it that couple hours of the Super Bowl. And then at the end, when they crown the champion, you stop and then you post the next picture in the second box, the before and then the after. And then you just tag me, read_between_stitches on Instagram, or just wherever social media is. I have everything, I believe, like normal. And I want to see everyone's progress. I think it'll be super fun. I'm going to do it. I'm not sure if I'm going to work on my sister's flowers or my squares. I think I'm going to do my squares. So I'm very excited to get some progress on that done. And I just think it would be super cool to have the community like come together and stitch on something during probably the most ridiculous game that's ever been. Anyway, so that is stitching. That's all I have. I have been stitching a bit. I have made some progress. I've had two new starts since my last floss tube, and I actually made pretty decent progress on those. So yeah, so next floss tube video will probably be next weekend, so that's exciting. So you'll have to come back for that if you're here for floss tube. So if you're here for reading, I read 7 books in January, and y'all, that's crazy. Usually I read 3 to 5, sometimes less than that. It just really depends. I feel like all of last year I was in a complete reading slump. I just didn't really pick up any books that I still think about. I had maybe 4 or 5 stars of the whole year. So it was like a challenge last year for me for reading. This year I started off strong. I am going strong still. I just have really changed the way that I'm reading, the way that I'm picking books, and I think that's helped tremendously. So without further ado, we're gonna go ahead and get started. So the first book I picked up is Never Lie by Frida McFadden. This is my second Frida McFadden book, and I read The Housemaid, and it was good. I think I like The Housemaid better, than Neverlie. I heard a lot of good stuff about Neverlie. I heard it was the craziest book. It was the most twisted book. It was the most, like, you know, shocking. It also was the most unrealistic book. It was very, just, I can't believe what, like, I got to the end and I was very, not angry, but just really, like, that was it. I don't know. So I'm sorry for all you Neverlie fans. I know there's a lot of you. It is about this girl, Trisha, and her husband, Ethan, are going to see a house that they want to buy, and it's a blizzard. Who goes to see a house in the blizzard? I'm from Texas. I've never had a blizzard in my life. I don't think I would, though. So they go to the house. They get trapped there because of the blizzard. Then she finds the lady that used to live there was a therapist, so she finds all her tapes that she had taped of her clients, you know, talking about their traumas, and she starts listening to them. Her husband's kind of like shady. I knew he was shady from the very beginning, and so she, like, things get moved in the house when they're the only ones that are supposed to be there. It just is very, it is a thriller, so if you like thrillers, I would read it. I don't like thrillers. For a thriller, to me, it has to be very fast-paced, where I don't have time to go to the back and find out what happens, because that's what I do. I read like the first 50 pages. I'm like, no, I can't take it. I go to the back and I read the last like 20 pages, and I'm like, okay, 2 stars. So that's probably my fault, but yes. So, but I will say, Frida McFadden's books are very fast-paced and they're very easily read. And she kind of reminds me of James Patterson in a way, where her chapters are pretty short and they go by super quickly. So you're going through them pretty fast. It was a fast read. I gave this book, I think, 3 or 4 stars. On Goodreads, unfortunately, you can't do like half stars or quarter stars, but on Storygraph you can. And I'll link all my Storygraph and Goodreads information down at the bottom. But on Storygraph, I think I rated it like a 3.75 because it did keep me engaged. It's just the ending. I was like, this makes no sense. So that was Neverlie by Frida McFadden. The next book I read was called Edge. This is by Drew Lennox. This is smut. I was like, do I talk about my smut books on my YouTube channel? Mom, if you're watching, close your ears. So this is about Charlie. She is a girl, obviously, that starts a relationship with a guy, Drew, online. He is kind of like a tech guy, and they have like an online relationship, kind of like friends. They meet, and she goes into the world of BDSM with him. It's very tame for a start to BDSM, which I think that is the author's purpose. I think this is like an introductory to the world. So it does explain some key aspects, some lingo, some clubs, some, you know, the difference between a dom and a sub. So it's very interesting if you're anywhere close to wondering about that life. It wasn't done inappropriately or like too much, you know, all of a sudden, like if you're into that, it can be too much. And so it wasn't. It was done pretty well. It is part of a series. I think it is a 4-book 3 or 4 book series. I'm really bad at series. Really bad. I have to really like the book to keep reading it. As you can see, I was spoiled on Harry Potter growing up, and nothing can ever compare to Harry Potter. So you have to be pretty good to get me to read a whole series. It hardly ever happens. I've read Harry Potter, The Hunger Games, ACOTAR, Throne of Glass, and I honestly think that's it. Like a series I've completed. Or Blood and Ash too, if you're familiar with that. It's not for me. I have to really care what the characters are doing and where they're going in life to read series, and it's just not for me. In this one, I picked up the first book. It was fine. I think I gave it 3 stars, and that's it. I don't care. I don't care what happens to them. I have a girlfriend of mine, Her name's Sarah as well. Shout out to Sarah if you're watching. Hi. But she's the opposite. She's like, I have to find out what happened. What if they died? What if I don't care, literally. So yeah. So speaking of series though, the next book I've read was Powerless by Lauren Roberts. Oh my gosh. So I have a lot to say about this book. It was really good. I gave it 5 stars, my first 5-star read of the year. She does a really good job of keeping you engaged with the characters. About the plot, it's very balanced. The characters have flaws. The plot just keeps on moving along. However, I do have a slight issue with her in this book. It is almost exactly like the first Hunger Games. And I don't know how I feel about that. It is not original at all. It's definitely think of the Hunger Games, except everyone has powers. So you have except this girl, her name is Pei. She lives in like kind of the lower class of the city, and she doesn't have any powers. So she's looked at less than other people that do. So the king, she doesn't know. She kind of like hides her ordinary as a sidekick. She saves the prince, and then the king decides to have a tournament of like champions per se. And she gets picked to go into this tournament because she saved the prince, basically. And so she goes into this tournament. They have different obstacles, different fights, and she has to, work her way around because she doesn't have any super abilities. They're 2 prince brothers. One is going to be king. The other is kind of like the sheriff of the town, if you will. And she kind of has a romance with both of them, kind of like a triangle. And it is the Hunger Games, for sure. And I just don't understand how publishing works. If I was a publisher and I read this book, I would say, no, this is like a copyright infringement. Like, you can't post the same book because, I mean, the guy gets hurt. The prince, the older prince that's going to be king is just like Gale. I even think there's like something to do with bread. Like they break bread together. It is crazy how similar it is. Saying that, it is still a 5-star read to me. I don't want to ever base my books on like a moral ethic code, just because to me that is too serious for reading. Reading is my enjoyment. It is my pastime. It's to get out of my head. So I never want to think too hard on a rating of a book. Just be aware that if you do decide to pick this up and you are a big Hunger Games fanatic, you will probably be upset because it is a lot. However, I am reading the second book of this series, and it is nothing like Hunger Games. So I guess maybe she, maybe was having trouble like getting her imagination to start going. And then, it did, and she's just added on to the story. But I'm probably 30 or 35% into the second one, and it is nothing like Hunger Games. So there's that. Anyways, so that's my spiel on Powerless. All right, next is another smut. I have a really good girlfriend of mine that I work with, and she recommended me this book. It's Lights Out by Nevessa Allen. And she was listening on audiobook, and she told me, she said, Sarah, you got to read this book. And for her to tell me to read a book is, I'm like, okay, I have to read it, because she's not going to tell me to read anything that she knows I wouldn't like. This one was really good. If you ever have read Butcher and Blackbird, it's very, very similar. This girl, she's a trauma nurse. Her name is Allie. She gets online just to let off some steam, and she finds this guy who's masked. And he is doing some sexy things on the television or the computer, I guess. And she kind of like, has a little crush on him, and come to find out that it's her ex-boyfriend's roommate. He knows who she is, but she does not know who he is. So it's a very stalker. He breaks into her house. He hides in her room with a gun that's not loaded. It's fake. And kind of, goes from there. But it was really good. I was very invested in their story. They were very believable. you know, like their personalities meshed well together, their careers, there's kinks that they like together. It was very well written. It is very spicy. I was listening to it, I believe, at work, and had to turn it off a couple times when the guys would walk into my office, although they're well aware, but I had to turn it off and then finish it later. But yeah, very, very good. There is some trigger warnings. I would definitely check those out before reading that book, just in case, you know, you do have triggers, because it does get pretty dark in some places. So that was Lights Out. I think I rated it a 4 or a 5. I'm not sure, but it was really good. I really liked it. They have another one coming out, and I'm going to read that as well. I don't remember what it's called, but I'll read that series. But anyways, okay. So the next book that I read was All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. This was our book club of the book, or the book club of the book, the book club of the month for the month of January for my little bitty book club that I host. It is about World War II. We have Marie Laure, who is blind. She lives with her dad in Paris. And since she is blind, her dad has built her a huge landscape of the city that's made of wood, where she can feel her way and take direction from her dad on a miniature scale. And then she goes outside and she knows where she is. She knows what to do. She knows, you know, where to go. So then the Germans come and they push them out of France, or out of Paris. And she goes in with her dad and runs and stays with her uncle and his caretaker. Her uncle was in World War I with her grandpa, and he has PTSD pretty bad, but she goes into her grandpa's room and she finds a radio. Then, you know, things happen. Her, I guess, uncle, what would that be? Great uncle comes around. You know, that was like kind of his light, and to get out of his little depression funk. On the other side, it's a dual narrated story. On the other side, we get Werner. He is a German, and he is going to a German school for boys that was run by Nazis. So he is trained to be a Nazi. He is trained to, in horrific fashion. There are some things that the Germans made his peers do, that is horrible. But that is the way of the land. I like to read World War II fiction or nonfiction because I can't talk today, because it really gives kind of a perspective of what it was like back then. Every time I do read like historical fiction, I go and I research some stuff, just so I have a better understanding of really what happened, of what went on. Was there a school for German boys? Like, if they did treat them like that, and all of it's true. But he is like a good guy. So he is being trained to be a Nazi, but it's not in his blood. Like, he does not want to be. He is trying his everything not to get brainwashed. So he is fixing radios. So what he does is he has trained in radios, and he can sense or pick up using something of where broadcasts are coming from. So all these good guys that are, you know, getting on the radio and telling everyone like, hey, we're here, we're stuck, the Germans are taking over, he can go find where that's coming from, and then the Nazis that are with him go and they kill those people for spreading lies, but really it was the truth. So things happen on both sides. You know, you get both of their stories, and it does go, you know, I think it goes back from like 1940, it'll tell, you know, a couple things, and then it jumps to like 1945 when they're getting liberated. So it is a pretty good story. I gave it 5 stars. It was kind of hard to follow because you get the dual perspective, and you also get the time jump. So you have to kind of like keep up with that, and the time jump does go back and forth. It's not, you know, 1940 to 1945. No, it like goes throughout the years, so you kind of have to keep track with that. But everyone in my book club gave it 4 or 5 stars. It was really good. It's really heart-wrenching. It was written very well, very beautiful. I think it won the Pulitzer Prize in 2020, I believe. I'll have to look that up, but It's a very good literary fiction. Um, like I said, beautiful writing. You really do feel heartbreak for these people that have to go through this stuff. And I did like it too, because it wasn't about the concentration camps. I've read a lot of historical, World War II historical fiction about concentration camps, that they're stuck in there. The Tattoo of Auschwitz, the Boy in the Striped Pajamas. If you haven't read that, I highly recommend that book. And it was a good perspective to get away from that and see the struggles that were different, but very much there for people outside of the camps. So very good, very, like I said, heart-wrenching, very hard to read in some moments. And I had to put the book down, kind of take a break from it. But still, nonetheless, I gave it 5 stars. It was a great read. It's also a series on Netflix, I believe, and I haven't started it yet. I might do that tonight. But just FYI, if you do read it, or maybe it sounds interesting to you, but you just don't really, want anything that deep, there is a series on Netflix, and it's titled the same, All the Light We Cannot See. All right, moving on. After that, I needed something light. I had requested a book at the library, and I went to go pick it up, and I just, usually I have to make holds on my library just because it's kind of small in the city that I live in, so I have to get it from other cities. But I found this book just wandering in my library, and it's called Dear George Clooney, Please Marry My Mom. And it is, I didn't write the author down. I'll get that. But it is about this girl. Her name is Violet, and her parents got a divorce. Her mom, I think, lives in Seattle, and her dad lives in California. And she does not like her life. Like, her dad remarried. She hates her twin sisters, her stepmom, and her mom is dating a new guy. And so she's just spiraling, basically. And her mom had met George Clooney when she was younger. So she is doing everything she can to get George Clooney to come and meet her mom and to marry her. If you're wondering, yes, it's for like 5th grade. It's for like a 5th grade reading level. But it was the cutest book I think I've read in a long time. If you have a teenager or a 5th grader, and especially if they're going through like a divorced parent situation, it is a great book. Her feelings were completely valid. The way they wrote it was very helpful, I think, because, she learned lessons along the way about just, being more mature and, life. And it ended, I can't give away how it ended, but it ended so adorable and so cute. And I was just smiling literally the whole time I was reading this 5th grade book. I was just like smiling. It was very much needed after All the Light We Cannot See. It was super cute. It was super funny. I was laughing. My husband's like, "What are you laughing about?" I'm like, "This book is so cute. It was written for 12-year-olds, but I love it." So I'm not sure if that or All the Light We Cannot See is going to be my best book of the month, which is weird, because they're 2 very different books, complete opposite of each other, and I just loved both of them. So if you need something light, if you've just read, A Little Life, or a deep emotional read that you're crying and you're evaluating your life, pick Dear George Clooney, Please Marry My Mom up, and you will just be so much happier because of it. Okay, so the next and final book that I picked up was Towers Falling. This was on my TBR. I have a 5-year-old, and he's starting school next year. I have a list. I write every book that I read to him down for some who knows reason, but I do try to keep books that teach him a lesson or are nonfiction books, but written for kids that they can better understand, the world. This I read because of that reason. It is about 9/11, and this girl who lives in Brooklyn, her name is Deja. She goes to a new school and she has to meet new friends, and it's in Manhattan. And she was too young to know what 9/11 was until she starts learning about it in school. She comes from a very poor family. Her dad has horrendous PTSD. He can't work. He has panic attacks, and she never understood why. She would always get mad at him because her family is struggling and he can't go to work. And then she starts learning about September 11th. She has to do a couple of projects with her friends, one of which is Muslim. So she has to learn about the hate and the racism towards her. Then she finds out her dad was actually in 9/11. He was in the South Tower. So she kind of learns more about her dad, more about her family, her community, the city that she lives in, the people, the world, really. And it was a very good book. I think when Cutler is in that age, and again, I think it's like fifth grade, sixth grade reading level, it would be a good book for him to pick up and kind of get a different perspective, like a kid his age, learning about 9/11, how he will learn about it. I just actually had a date with my sister-in-law last night, and we talked about 9/11 and how it is very weird because she's a lot younger than me. She was only 5 when it happened. I was a freshman in high school. So I definitely remember it like it was yesterday. I just never have thought about my son growing up and learning about it. And when I'm like, oh yeah, I was there. And I mean, I'm going to sound like a old person, but like, I was there and I can talk to him about it and I can kind of let him know how it was, So yeah, that it was a good book. I think I did a 3.5 to 4. I do think it could be done a lot better. I am going to look to see if there's any, intermediate, junior high-ish books out there that do talk about 9/11. I know that there is a graphic novel I read that I kept the name of. But I would keep this if you have any, daughters or sons that are learning about 9/11 that are in that age range. It was good and informative. And in the back, it has like a list of the timeline and all that jazz. So those were my 7 books for January. I don't know how I feel about this, about talking about books. I feel like I ramble and I do get on like off topics, like crazy. That's who I am as a person. But I might try it one more time in February and just see how I feel, or just, if you'll have any feedback, please leave it down below. Like I said, I will be back next week for a floss tube, regular old floss tube, where I have some starts, 2 FFOs, and some whips. So anyway, I hope y'all have a really good weekend. I hope that y'all enjoy the Super Bowl no matter how you're celebrating. And yeah, I'll see y'all later. Bye.